loving observing, but I know we are also very tight on time and have some amazing panelists and breakout sessions later today. My name is Karma Lowe. I am the Assistant Dean for Diversity and Inclusion here at the Columbia School of Social Work. Thank you, it's okay. Shout out to School of Social Work. And I am always so humbled to be a part of the Beyond the Bars experience. I have been here since the very beginning when our initial student organizers with the Criminal Justice Caucus conceived of this conference, and it's been an honor to watch it grow and expand over the last 9 years. I want to thank both Kathy and Cameron and Cheryl for inviting me just for 30 seconds to give a quick welcome and hello. And I want to just sort of reiterate some of the things that were said at the panel this morning, which I was watching from my office. I think it was Taz who talked about the need to have formerly incarcerated folks at the table when we're talking about policies and practices. And one of the things that I'm personally committed to doing is just that. So my role is new here at the school. I was appointed last May, and one of the first projects that I'm working on is creating a resource guide for our formerly incarcerated students on how to get licensed as social workers, because a lot of states have various restrictions depending on what their convictions may have been. And my first intern that I'm hosting this year is a formerly incarcerated woman. So, right, you gotta practice what you preach, right? So with that said, I want to again thank for the voices in the room, thank that student for what she is teaching me this year about just her experiences and sort of the challenges that she's already been facing and will continue to face once she's graduated and trying to get her social work license. And I want to turn the mic over to Michelle, who will also do another welcome before we introduce our next panel. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy.
Thank you. Let's give one more round of applause to the prior session because it was amazing. I also want to just use the mic to say the point that Erin raised about those of us who are mandatory reporters thinking through critical refusal on the job. It might be a really important gathering after this conference or a small conversation to begin during lunch. Any of you who are teachers, social workers, if you are bold enough to be sitting in the folds on the front lines, you've got serious questions about the ways in which we are all both complicit and trying to resist. But there are not easy pathways, and there are only pathways that we can carve together. So I do want to suggest, can anybody just raise a hand if you'd be interested in a conversation over lunch on critical complicity, critical refusals? Find each other, all right? This is not a me thing, but I think that conversation needs to begin immediately for educators, social workers, etc. Second thing I want to say is we are about to shift to the second panel. And again, we have another brilliant group of voices and critical conversations. So I'm going to ask us who loves Gloria Anzaldúa? Well, if you don't, read her tonight if you don't know her. All right. So Gloria Anzaldúa has got this book called Borderlands, right? Right? And inside the borderlands, she argues, inside a rich river are a whole set of currents. And they're currents of possibility, but they're not all flowing in the same direction. We are about to enter a borderlands conversation about strategy. We are not going to all agree. Is that fair? But we are all going to learn, listen, and try to imagine points of shared commitment and points of departure. And I can imagine no one better to facilitate this conversation than Nkechi Taifa, who coincidentally is founder and principal at the Taif Group. And her law professor. So it's this is what chosen family looks like. Welcome. Thank you. I got you.
Okay, wow, I'm so thrilled to be here Beyond the Bars. Greetings, family. As was just said, I'm Nkechi Taifa, And I'm really thrilled, again, to be able to moderate this phenomenal panel. And I want to just take just a few minutes at the, I can't believe that. And I'm about to tell y'all to turn off your phones. Oh, God. I'm going to just take a few minutes to give some opening framework remarks. I'm going to introduce our panelists, and we're going to have a robust discussion, and then we're going to open it up for some Q&A. Is that okay? So my opening framing is going to be in the context of an analogy that I heard about 20 years ago from a former colleague, current colleague of mine, Adjoa Yatoro, and I'm going to adapt it as follows. And so my adaptation is that the justice movement is like a train. All right. The train left the station during the enslavement era with the enslaved demanding freedom. Sojourner Truth and Demar Vesey, Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, they all got on that train, doing what they could to speak, to write, to resist by any means necessary, or to even just walk away quietly into the night. Despite setbacks, the train didn't slow down, but it gathered more speed rolling along. The train helped to get the 13th Amendment passed, but was unable to do it without that prison slavery clause. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude shall exist except as punishment for a crime. The train, however, was not derailed by this clause. Despite the proliferation of the peonage system, which essentially re-enslaved freed persons as they worked off spurious debts, despite the lynchings, despite the bombings, despite the terrorism, the train, with fits and starts, slowed, but it charged forward. Ida B. Wells, Fannie Lou Hamer, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, they all got on that train, trying to steer it in a righteous direction. They were all impacted by the legacy of enslavement, and although each had different strategies of reaching the goal, the destination was the same: to get the passengers on that train to freedom. Right. George Jackson, the Attica brothers, San Quentin Six got on that train during the early 70s, sparking the modern era prison movement. But then tough on crime hit, accentuated with a bang as the crime bill of 1994 hit the scene, and the train nearly flew off the tracks. But the train didn't derail, but brought advocacy groups together in Washington that had been traveling separately in different cars. And over the next decade, the train continued slowly but doggedly down the track, picking up new passengers, and the formation of new organizations, and the Justice Roundtable was birthed, expanding the consolidation of the train's cars that worked primarily in Washington, D.C. And incarcerated people who had begun coming out of prisons during that time became conductors on this train across the country. Eddie Ellis and Divine Pryor and Roach Brown, Kathy Boudin, Joe Wilkins, Dorsey Nunn, Norris Henderson, Vivian Nixon, Charles Thornton, Susan Burton, Linda Evans, Glenn Martin, Susan Rosenberg, Clean Glasgow, Bill Cobb, Michael Blaine, Fareed Mujahid, Laura Whitehorn, Christina Voigt, and the list goes on and on. Many more all over the country during those early years, many of whom we're not even aware of, educating the train's passengers on issues such as narrative change, language, ban the box, higher education, barriers to reentry, and more. And not long after that, a first wave of clemency recipients walked out of prison under the Clinton administration, with Kimber Smith emerging as the poster child for policy change. So along with the Justice Roundtable, the train picked up more cars to accommodate the proliferation of additional passengers, and the coalition from the previous decade was vastly expanded. In Washington, the Justice Roundtable developed legislative advocacy and direct action strategies to fuel the train and increase the speed within which it was moving to its destination. The Roundtable's Reentry Working Group worked for 6 years to bring about the passage of the Second Chance Reentry Bill in 2008, with unprecedented strategic collaboration with politically conservative passengers who had become proximate to prison issues. And there was principal collaboration with passengers new to the train, new to Washington, new to working across the aisle, but determined to make a difference. The Roundtable's Law Enforcement and Drug Policy Working Groups in 2003 helped to shine a light on the abuses in Tulia, Texas, where a young lawyer named Vanita Gupta, at that time from the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, armed with a Soros Justice Fellowship, was making huge waves. In 2008, the roundtables behind the Psycho Project was advanced with the convening of a huge groundbreaking conference where advocates came to Washington. The Roundtable Sentencing Reform Working Group refocused the advocacy community's attention to the crack cocaine disparity issue, helping to spearhead the Fair Sentencing Act of 2010. And then Michelle Alexander's new Jim Crow hit the book stands, thrusting into the mainstream public domain what many others who had already been on the train have been talking about for years. And then later, Brian Stevenson's elevation of the connection from enslavement to mass incarceration. Both Brian and Michelle and Ta-Nehisi Coates captured the imagination of countless spectrums of people. The train picked up fuel and energy and imagination and passion and more from the formerly incarcerated and impacted people's community and other groups and individuals were coming out of prison and began getting on that train at various stations. The train was filling up with people embracing various strategies on justice reform. Their ticket for the train ride was their determination to get justice and their willingness to not simply be passengers, but rather to become the workers and the fuel for the progress of the train. And with all this increase in activity, the train went from one that traveled the back rails to one that was in the main thoroughfares. Soros Justice and other fellowships blossomed. Criminal justice-oriented films were released. Advocacy efforts in the states picked up steam, and the Obama administration vowed to make a difference in the realm of criminal justice. And as more and more people were being released from prison, women began demanding their rightful seats at the table, and their voices gained prominence. Andrea James, Topeka Sam, Amy Povar, Justine Moore, countless others, many of whom are right here in this room today. Adult children of incarcerated parents joined the train, and an era of Obama clemencies came to fore. Van Jones came on board the train, and celebrity attention began to take center stage. Many who had been on the train for a long time started feeling a little bit crowded. They felt that some who just got on the train seemed to ignore those who had been traveling for a long time. Yet, there was a certain excitement. There was a buzz going through the train that had the feel of anticipation, but also possibly slight possessiveness. The train was moving, and everybody wanted to own it, wanted to claim that it was their fuel, their ticket, their effort that was responsible for the train's momentum. Hey, y'all, the train began moving faster now, and at every stop, it began picking up more and more passengers. Even Kim Kardashian came on board, and she made a difference. The crowds outside the train clamored for a look as the train starts speeding down the track. Many of them clamored to see those with mainstream notoriety, tending to ignore the less famous, hardworking masses. There's some disruption on the train. There are bumps, disagreements about legislative strategies, executive interactions, questionable agendas. Some feel there were personal attacks. A low rumbling is going on, slowing the train down, rocking it left and right. But y'all know there are valleys in every single movement. There are valleys in every single movement. This is nothing new. It was there during the enslavement era, the civil rights movement era, the Black Power era, and now the mass incarceration era. Thus, we must forever keep our purpose in the forefront. Yes. The reason we are on the train in the first place. Yes. We must remember that the train is not the province of one person or one organization or one political party. And we must recognize and honor that not one strategy will win the day. Yes. In order to get to our final destination, we need many different people and mechanisms and strategies. The train needs porters and engineers and conductors and cooks, fuel, seats, passengers, to name only some things. The train's fuel may at one time be wood. It might be coal at another time, raw determination at another. The train will get to its final destination with not one, but all strategies. And each must be and seen as supportive of the entire movement. But as not only the possibilities, but also the challenges and valleys at times do loom large. So we pause at convenings such as this, Beyond the Bars. Thank you, Kathy Boudin and Cheryl Wilkins. We pause, if for only a moment, to identify the challenges and the setbacks and the valleys in order to surmount them. Because after all, we cannot allow anything to stop our train's forward progression. So with those opening remarks, opening framing, I want to turn to the experts. I want to turn to our illustrious panel, all of whom have been on the forefront of this train, okay, organizing and mobilizing for justice system change. So just raise your hand as I go to, I'm going to Deanna first. Deanna Hoskins, you know, we were at the, hey, yes, give it up. We were at the White House, and she was working for the Department of Justice as its chief manager of the Department of Justice's Second Chance portfolio and head of the Federal Interagency Reentry Council. I swear, sitting in there, I really did not even know you were a formerly incarcerated person. You know what I'm saying? And then I found out, I said, oh my God, they finally got something right. Putting somebody with experience, okay, at both the local, the state, and the federal level, putting that person in charge. Deanna is currently the executive director of Just Leadership USA. Let's give it up. Louis Speed. Louis, I ain't known you for so long. National Organization for Cut 50, but I swear everywhere I go, you pop up everywhere. You know, he is there everywhere I turn around. Lewis served as director of the mayor's office for reentry affairs in Connecticut. He was instrumental in the successful enactment of justice reform legislation there. He holds degrees in criminal justice and psychology. And, you know, we were going over some of these questions. I said, my first question is going to be talking about what's your theory of change? And he gave me some psychological something. He said, well, I have a, whatever, you're the expert on all this. I won't even get into that. I said, well, all right now. He knows what he's talking about, I'm telling you. He has the degrees as well. He's also a board-certified addictions counselor and licensed alcohol and addictions practitioner. National Organization for Cup 50. Give it up for Louis. Reed. All right, Laura Whitehorn, co-founder of RAP, Release Aging People in Prison. Now, a lot of y'all don't know, but I was Laura's lawyer back in the day. Yeah, back in the day. And I have never, we talk about client-centered advocacy, etc. I've never had a client who insisted on, when we're supposed to be discussing strategy for her case, she's laying out strategy. How we gonna free Mumia Abu-Jamal? I mean, I'm really sad. I mean, Lord, you remember that? I mean, I'm just saying, these were the early days when Mumia was first in play. And we spent many of those attorney-lawyer client meetings with Susan, and she here somewhere right there. Yeah, Susan Roseberg and the rest of the crew talking about freedom for Mumia and other political prisoners. I feel bad because you got 10 years in prison. I was your lawyer. But anyway.
Great lawyer.
I would just say I have always been impressed with Laura before her incarceration, during her incarceration. That's a whole nother story in and of itself. And the work that she's doing now after incarceration. Give it up for Laura White. Okay. Sheena, I'm going to Sheena right now. Sheena Mead, Director of Strategic Partnerships and Initiatives for the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition. In 2016, she ran for a state house seat to amplify the issues of women and returning citizens that were not being addressed in state laws and policies. Sheena, when I first met you, I swear I kind of gotten it wrong. I thought that you had won, that you were the state senator, you know. And I said, yes. But, Sheena and her husband, Desmond, were in the leadership of the recent effort that allowed for the restoration of voting rights to 1.4 million returning citizens in Florida. This sister right here. So we're going to hear about that. And my sister, last without absolutely least, Cassandra Federici. We're talking about New York State Director at the Drug Policy Alliance. My sister, Cassandra, mover and shaker on all things drug policy, all things harm reduction, war on drugs, police accountability. Girl, you know, it's a textbook just to study the types of things that you have been advancing. She's the co-author of the Blueprint for a Public Health and Safety Approach to Drug Policy. She's currently focusing on building a reparative justice framework, yes indeed, to repair the harm from the drug war. Let's give our hand to our, yeah. All right, great. So in my opening framing, I spoke of a justice frame comprised of people and organizations with differing tactics and strategies to reach a common destination. So what I would like from each of you to take about 3 minutes to describe your organizational mission, your organizational strategy for change, what you're fighting for. You got about 3 minutes, just go around and let's just hear just what your organization strategies or theory of change. And I know Lewis, that
it just had a different connotation to me.
yeah, theory. Well, why don't we let you go on and start? Go on.
Well, I was raised by my.
Yeah, and speak
Can
really
you guys
into
hear
the
me?
mic. Yes.
Good. Okay. So I was raised by my grandmother who passed away last April, and I know better than to speak before a woman. So I'm going to defer opening comments to my colleague.
Okay, I'll go along with that.
Deanna or
I like
someone
that.
else.
Okay. You got a brownie point for me on that one now, Deanna.
That's what you call strategy. I get it, and I'm okay with it. But no. As Nikichi said, I'm Deanna Hoskins, President and CEO of Just Leadership USA, where our mission is to cut the U.S. correctional population in half by 2030 by elevating and centering the voices of those directly impacted. How do we do that? We do that strategically in two ways. In one way, investing in the leadership of directly impacted individuals to drive bold policy change, and we also do it by recruitment and actually advocacy around the Close Rikers campaign. We have a closed MSDF in Wisconsin and Close the Creek in Philadelphia. So when we talk about an element of what is the one word that describes what just leadership is, it's about decarceration. Decarceration. It's one thing to reduce a population. It's another thing to shrink the system. So when individuals, we focus on, with Close Rikers, we're asking for a drop in the population, but we're shrinking and taking beds offline. You can get people released, but if you don't take those beds offline, you haven't stopped the pipeline to come in and fill them. So in turns, we're just recycling beds in the correctional system without really shrinking and changing the system and putting in alternatives to incarceration. So one of the things that we focus on definitely is not expanding the carceral state. Most people say, when we say correctional system, most people think brick and mortar. We look at the correctional system, whether it's mass incarceration, mass supervision. One of the elements that I tell my team every day, incarceration is not monitoring historically if it ain't the first shackle your family had.
All right, thank you. Who wants to be next?
Okay, so I'm Laura Whitehorn, Release Aging People in Prison. I'm really happy to be here. I'm honored to be on this panel and it's so great to be speaking with Nikichi. She's a great lawyer. If anyone ever has a political trial, she is your person. She gave a speech to the judge at my sentencing. That was amazing. We can't find it. Right. Anyway, and I sort of want to remember someone now who a lot of you know, Mujahid Fareed, who was at this conference. He would come in and he'd be sitting out there, you know, talking to people. We miss him so much. So rap is a kind of funny thing because we sound like, you know, we're trying to get old, broken down people out of prison. That sounds really unchallenging in some ways, but we're actually an abolitionist organization. And the reason that we began with Kathy and me and Fareed and Sophia, and with Nikichi's advice sometimes, and other formerly incarcerated people were with us, is that we wanted to dismantle and transform, not just even the prison system, but the entire white supremacist foundation of it, which is to control and destroy communities of color, and it's no accident, and I wish this were more in the dialogue, that mass incarceration began in the 70s, because that was the era when, and there are a few other people here old enough to remember with me, when the US government actually felt challenged. The Black Panther Party was called the greatest threat. Jose Saldana, who's our wonderful new director, talks about the Young Lords. They were part of it. So mass incarceration was not different from the fundamental white supremacy that is established in this country. And so that's why RAP went for something which gets to the foundation of the system, which is what Fareed used to refer to as the punishment paradigm, which is only in existence because of the large numbers of Black and brown and other people of color in the system. He used to say, if it were all white people, you wouldn't see people being hit for parole after eight times at the board when they're 67 and 80 years old. So that's sort of the approach of RAP. And what is our strategy, what's our theory of change, is that we're not just trying to change policies, although we are. And now we have a Democratic, government in New York State, so we're trying really hard. But our approach was not legislative in the beginning. It's about shifting power, not about policy so much as it is about power. And our strategy is community organizing. And we start with the community of formerly incarcerated people and advocates, because when we started RAP, no one knew what the hell parole even was in New York State, even the legislative bodies that are supposed to oversee it. So we had our work cut out for us. Okay, so that answers that. And then how are we going to do it? We've been trying, and we have seen, we've had some success. We're not a big organization. We're not even a 501c3. We're a community-based organization. We have a lot of volunteer labor, and we go out into communities and we try to talk to politicians and all of that. And I'll just say, we try to get to the core. We try not to throw anyone under the bus. That's a huge principle of RAP. And we can talk about that later, about why that's so. But we're organizing and organizing. And one of the things we want to do is to have everyone understand why expanding parole, compassionate release, and clemency in New York State and around the country and federally is key to ending not just mass incarceration, but the carceral state and its existence in communities. I'll stop there.
Great, thank you so much. You all decide who wants to go next. It doesn't have to go in order. Yeah, let's sandwich you in there, Louis. I don't want you to end either.
Yeah.
Put you in the middle,
I also want to say that I know that there's a lot of people in this room who believe in equality. I wasn't pushed off to the side just because I'm the only male panelist. I chose to be over here so that I can defer to the women. But my name is Louis L. Reed. I'm the national organizer for Cut 50. I also served nearly 14 years in federal prison. Was rearrested approximately 18 months to 2 years ago for child support related arrears that accrued while I was in prison. And we have two very distinct but missions that align probably with everyone on this panel. We want to be able to reduce our national prison population in half, and we also want to be able to reduce crime in half in the United States of America. We don't want our families hurt. We don't want our communities broken. We don't want people debilitated by substance abuse disorders. And how we do that through one of several methods, but we do that through community organizing. We do that through lifting up and amplifying the leadership of people who are formerly incarcerated. And we have a very person-centered approach. We don't necessarily believe in inmates who are leading this work or ex-cons who are leading this work. We believe in people who have been impacted by the criminal justice system. We have a person-centered approach where we place the people before the issues. And I personally believe that if you continue to place the people before the issues, then we can get far much more accomplished than not. So that's where we are.
Thank you. Who's next?
You got it.
Sheena got it.
Is this on? Hey, y'all. So my name is Sheena Mead. I'm the Director of Strategic Partnerships for Florida Rights Restoration Coalition. Also over the organizing department. I want to give a shout out to two of the folks that came with me, Ms. Connie Burton, a kick-ass organizer from Tampa. Got my girl Tanisha Johnson, formerly incarcerated. She's one of our leaders in our organization as also. Y'all give it up for her. Hello, these are our people. So our organization, to understand where we're going, I just got to go a little bit about where we came from. So the original intent for Florida Rights Restoration Coalition was to focus on restoring the voting rights for people with felony convictions. And I say that rather than saying formerly incarcerated, because in Florida, you could get felonies like candy tickets around here in Florida, right? So a lot of folks who are convicted of felonies never been to prison in Florida. And so that's a part of the narrative. We can get into that later. But the original intent was to restore the voting rights. That journey started way before even Desmond Meade, the leader of our organization, had even put his hands on it. But with that, we were able to restore the voting rights for 1.4 million returning citizens in Florida. And now where we at, we knew that we had, in order to we had to stay focused on voting rights. Many people wanted us to pick up all the issues that you heard in this panel, all the issues you heard, like direct file, the issues with people who was incarcerated, but we had to stay laser focused on restoring the voting right Amendment 4. And at times it hurt folks. People thought we didn't care, which we did care, but we understood in order to build political power, political capital, that if we stay laser focused on restoring the voting rights of 1.4 million people, that now we have the political power to go boldly, as we are on Tuesday. On Tuesday, March 4th, we're taking up to 700 returning citizens and directly impacted people. Not all the people on the train. We ain't taking the allies and supporters. I said we're taking 600 returning citizens and their family members who now have a right to vote, who now have a voice, who was removed from the voting box, to Tallahassee, where we won in every State House district, Amendment 4, where we're going up there and saying, now is our time. These are our issues. These are the policies we need you to push. And so our theory of change is that we believe that we could change hearts and minds of people around criminal justice issues. And we've seen it. In Florida, in Desmond, in the words of Desmond, it's like you take an issue with Florida, where we jacked up on voting. Hello, let's just call it out. Felon disenfranchisement and partisan bickering, and we won. We won. So we got 5 million people who said yes on Amendment 4. 1 million more people voted for Amendment 4 than voted for any candidate on the ballot. So that lets you know, black, white, Republican, Democrat, Green Party, NPA, people care about this issue. And so we was able to change the hearts and minds because we put people over politics. It wasn't a partisan or political issue. We kept people who were directly impacted at the center of the movement. And so our theory change is that we're able to change hearts and minds because now we have people who are Republican, Democrat, black, white, ones who love Trump, ones who love Obama, who could come in the room on common shared experience and ground that they want to fight for a better criminal justice system. So that's our theory change.
Thank you so very much, Sheena. And Cassandra Federic, talk to us. Drug Policy Alliance.
Right, so I work at Drug Policy Alliance. We are a national organization working to end the criminalization of drugs for drug use and drug possession. And that is our theory of change. We believe that focusing on drugs and the role that drugs have played as a tool to criminalize people is an effective way to take away a tool of oppressing people. And I want to be specific. So folks up here have talked about decarceration. Our theory of change is decriminalization. So our theory of change is really focusing on how do we decriminalize people in all the systems that they are a part of. So we are in the social work school, and one thing that I am very clear about is that there are more people beating our ass than cops, judges, and district attorneys. We're talking about doctors, we're talking about social workers, we're talking about teachers, we're talking about crossing guard people. There are so many people that are acting as proxies for law enforcement, right? There is a criminalization apparatus that is suffocating us, that is killing us. And one of the easiest ways that that criminalization apparatus is able to operate is by criminalizing a behavior or a substance. And one of the most effective ways that they've been able to do that is to criminalize drugs. And so for us, we recognize that there are a couple of things at stake. One, drugs are neutral. they're neither good nor bad. And that's hard for some folks because people have had good and bad experiences with them. And my saying that they are neutral is not to invalidate any of that, but it is just to say that the circumstances around the drugs are what give it the value that you experience. The other thing that has been a struggle for me, because I've worked at DPA for like 9 years, is that when I walked in, the drug game is a libertarian boy system, right? Very much about the libertarian, you have the right to put whatever you want in your body and you should not be criminalized for that. And that was a very hard principle for me to swallow as a black woman, because my body has never been mine in the eyes of the state. My mom's body was not hers when she was in the hospital. My body, inside my mom's body, was not my mom's or myself's in the eyes of the state. So the idea of telling me that I need to be fighting for personal sovereignty was very hard as a theory of change. But the thing that I will tell you is that in the 9 years, I have realized that if I don't fight for my bodily autonomy, that I am not my ancestors' wildest dream. So our theory of change at DPA is really fighting for bodily autonomy, recognizing that people should have the rights to their bodies and wherever they are. 2, how do we decriminalize the whole system? Every system that you're engaging with, you shouldn't have to pee in a cup to get access to social services. You should not be, I tweeted today that literally in Missouri, someone in stage 4 cancer had cops ransacking his hospital room because he told his physicians that he didn't want to take opioids and he was taking THC. And the cops rolled in searching his hospital room. Our theory of change around decarceration won't necessarily address the criminalization that's happening in the hospital. And that's no shade. It's just about the different strategies of the train.
Okay, so thank you, all of you. So we're going to just go on and move right on and jump into it. Panelists, there's a lot of talk today about narratives and the importance of narrative change. And in the context of criminal justice reform, many of us during the late 90s, we promoted and we uplifted the narrative of the first-time nonviolent drug offender as low-hanging fruit that we felt legislators could easily grab hold of and begin the process of effectuating change. This was right after the crime bill in 1994, blah, blah, blah. But we essentially painted ourselves into a corner. So my question is, in different policies and legislation, sometimes when as we lift up one group, other groups become excluded. Can you talk about, and whoever wants to talk, I want to kind of hear from all of you on this, in your work where you felt you might have had to make a decision about excluding certain categories of people. And actually, I'm going to go to Sheena if I can on that. And then I know Laura had something to say about that. And then I'm going to move to the rest of you all with a similar type of question.
So I guess the most evident thing was a part of Amendment 4, we had a carve-out, and the carve-out excluded people with felony sexual offenses, murder, rapists, and murder. I think I said murder already. Yeah. And that was something that was we had to grapple with, right? Mm-hmm. And they took almost like 2 years to work on the ballot language, and they was going back and forth with like political scientists, not scientists, like psychologists. But at the end of the day, I think would help make the decision. Desmond drove all across the state talking to people. It was like really grassroots organizing. And he met with family members who had loved ones who was incarcerated, who had sexual offenses. He met with people who were released out on murder or had a sexual felony offense. And they talked to him, and a lot of the folks were still ready for the fight. They wanted us to move forward. And we realized with polling and focus groups that there was no way we was able to win if those folks were included in the ballot initiative language. And it was less than 2% of the 1.4. So it was a very, very low number. And we moved forward with the carve out, and there wasn't much, like, of course, with the voters, they they wasn't like, oh my God, why would you exclude them? But we did have certain people or organizations, or one person in one organization, that made it a big fight. But anyway, long story short, we had to move forward. You know, it's like, hey, do we not get 1.4 million people the right to vote, like, and take this chance? We were the closest to winning ever in history, and this has been came up to Tallahassee, to the Capitol. People have done legislation for years, and so we made that sacrifice and we went forward. But I just want to note that that does not mean we forgot about the people who were impacted. And so the thing is, 1.4 million people are now on the voting rolls. Now we have political power to continue to fight for the issues that impact them. And again, they're still a part of our membership, because we don't believe that no one should ever lose the right to vote. But we had to make that decision to be able to win. And guess what? We won. And there was plenty of letters and emails that came from people who did not have anybody impacted by the system, who said, I would not have voted for this if it include murderers or rapists, because it's the narrative of what people think those people are. I mean, and just the last thing I would say is, we know that there are people that have felony sexual offenses in Florida who got that charge, who was 18, who was dating a 17-year-old. That's right. But unfortunately, they fell in that carve out. And so again, we are at a place that we can now fight with strength and teeth on their issues now as well.
Okay, so I'm going to turn to Laura now at this time, because I know in the context of RAP and other of your advocacy, you advocate on behalf of people who were convicted of violent acts. Many might have involved police killings. You can't get much higher fruit than that. Do you have a response?
Well, not a direct. I mean, I think this is a really hard issue, because all of us want our comrades out. We want the suffering to stop. And I remember when I was first out, I was at some kind of conference with Joy James, and there were abolitionists there, and one of them was talking about anything we do that expands the prison system is negative. And I was thinking of my comrade Marilyn Buck, R.I.P., who was trying to get her doctorate in prison in a bunk that was designed for one woman and now had 4, and where there was, and she couldn't. And I was thinking, this is a fucking hard question. Okay, but with RAP, okay, the people that we advocate for, the old people, right? Old, over 50, because of how we all know, because how we age in prison faster. But the people that we advocate for, a lot of them, they wouldn't still be in prison if they hadn't committed violent crimes. And in fact, and people have said this, and Michelle Alexander just wrote about it, the majority, or I don't know, mathematically majority, but a lot of the people that we're talking about in prison were convicted of violent crimes. And that narrative you were talking about, Nikichi, if we got out all those people who should, most of these people, including the people that we advocate for, should never have been in prison in the first place, but certainly the low-level drug cases should never have been in prison. We get all those people out, and we make no changes to the systems that govern violence, quote-unquote violence, not violence when the state does it, but violence when someone on the street does it, then we won't, we'll never work our way out. We'll have, and the proportion, and we have this on our website, all the numbers about how the number of older people in New York State doubled, more than doubled, at the same time as the overall population fell substantially because of reforms to the Rockefeller drug laws. Okay, so there was a contradiction for us, because the people we're talking about have the lowest risk of recidivism. Mm-hmm. The lowest risk of recidivism lies with an older person over like 55 or 60 who committed murder. So we could use that, right? We could use that to open up the discussion. And we were pretty successful at that. And we actually, we've had some enormous victories, including raising the rate of parole in New York State by about double, and getting out some people like Herman Bell, my dear comrade, who was in the crosshairs and remains in the crosshairs of the PBA. And we have to bring into this discussion the police, because everywhere, I know it's true in Pennsylvania, I'm sure it's true in Florida here, the police organizations have the biggest voice. They have, here they have the New York Post, that's their media. We have the RAP newsletter that we send out on email. They have And if you go on rapcampaign.com, a very interesting thing just happened where the police cozy old relationship with the parole board got exposed, and we're pushing it. Okay, but when I said before it's about power, we have to confront those things, and we at RAP don't think we can do that if we don't talk about the people who were convicted of the hardest crimes. You know, I was in prison. I went to prison in '85. I got out just before 2000. And I saw, and Susan knows this too, we went to prison at a time when there were, we were in prison when the 800% increase in the number of women happened. And we watched it, and we watched it also from when we were in like DC jail, Baltimore City jail. We saw the way that mass incarceration was crafted was on the most unpopular cases, the cases that made people say, oh, I don't want anything to do with that. And so we feel like if we don't fight this now, we will be setting up the same thing. And the last thing is, we have a movement. And building a movement, we have a powerful movement. Remember when we were in California for the first conference of the formerly incarcerated and convicted peoples and families movement? Why do we all have these long names? So it was powerful, and we can do that. But if we start out by accepting the limitations, and we may lose, we may have to go back and fight again, and that's hard. But winning, I remember this from the women's movement in the 70s. We would say we want to end the war in Vietnam, and women would say to me, "Can't we choose something that we can do quicker? We need people get organized by victories." Well, I haven't seen that many. I know I have to stop. I haven't seen that many victories in my lifetime, but I'm still fighting. So.
Okay, so thank you very much for those insights, Laura. And I'm going to put a plug right now for a moment with you, Cassandra. I'll get right back. But I just want to turn to Deanna and Lewis, because it's along the same theme. This issue of narrative also played out in the context of the First Step Act. Statements such as, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, juxtaposed against, well, we need to do much better than just first steps. So I want to ask you two, are there examples of when you have felt that smaller steps are the way to move forward, or when you have felt that small steps just are not enough? If both of you all can kind of speak to that from your various perspectives.
We ain't gonna keep playing this one.
You guys are far much more intelligent than I am.
So I will go first. And let's just it is what it is. So let's not beat around the bush. Let's not talk about in the shadow. We're gonna talk about First Step Act. And just leadership opposed First Step Act as written. And I want to say the reason, and I think this is very important. So most bills that go through have various sections in them. I can agree with some sections, but then there are some sections that you can be totally against. And I think for me, I get what Sheena says, 1.4 million people getting their vote can always go back and get those who were left behind. So when your exclusion list is smaller than your inclusion list, that's a movement. But when your inclusion list outweighs your exclusion list, that's a competition. And that's actually specific of who's deserving and who's not. So definitely when the first version of First Step Act came out in May 2018, the sentencing reforms were not even included. We as advocates fought for the sentencing reforms to go back and be done, which everyone is now claiming victory on, understanding you didn't even walk in the room with that. So one of the things, I want to talk about why we were against First Step Act and why. It's one thing to exclude individuals, but not to entrench any further harm.
That's right.
The system we know is built on the structural racism, the structural disharms, the exclusion of Black and brown communities who are meant to be captivated into that system. For me, First Step Act in two ways. One, it entrenched the 13th Amendment when it opened up prison industrial complexes at the federal level to state and local. Yep. Any business that gains more business requires more bodies. So for me, that was a contradiction to what the bill was saying it was intending to do anyway. The actual earned credit actually for me went against all best practices. Having worked as a clinician, as a licensed addiction counselor, as a senior policy advisor to the Department of Justice that managed and oversaw policy that came across my desk to be implemented as the second chance, sitting in a leadership role at the Federal Reentry Council, understand how federal policy gets implemented. So the one thing in that bill, when it said only low-risk individuals qualify for the programming that gets you access to the earned time credit, outright excluded Black and brown bodies. Here's why. Black and brown bodies, when you utilize a racially biased risk assessment tool, there are some static questions in a risk assessment tool that no matter what I do in my life, I'll never be able to change the fact. I'll never be able to change the fact of my age of first interaction with law enforcement. I'll never be able to change the fact of how many probation violations I've had. So those are the things that are on a criminal justice risk assessment tool from a case manager who used to work in a prison system that did risk assessment tools. Before it gets to the dynamic questions that will change. So the dynamic questions that change is your age. We know age 18 to 25 is high risk in any criminal justice system just based on how old you are. You get 5 points going in the door just because of your age. So you can't even start to bring that score down until you mature, as research says, in age out of crime. But it still don't change the fact that you walked into the dynamic status part of that risk assessment with 20 to 25 points. That's right. Based on how Black and brown communities are policed. Our school systems have more school resource officers than we have guidance counselors. We don't have minor fights in elementary school and don't go to the principal's office. We go to juvie hall. So that now says my age of interaction, whereas in a more affluent school, what I like to use the example of personal. My son stole my car at 14. I got to call the police. No, he didn't. Because whatever harm happens, someone else for a more affluent community son steals her car. We both call the police. My son gets arrested and goes to juvie hall, and I go pick him up. Her son goes to the police station, and she get to pick him up.
That's exactly right.
So now my son already got 5 points if he ever end up in the criminal justice system, because that was his age of first interaction with law enforcement. That goes against all best practice of research. We spent $25 million with the Second Chance Act in 2007, and the first thing legislators said is, we need the research to know that it works. We need the research. So all this research says the most people who are high risk to recidivating are the ones you should put in programming. First Step Act says low risk get it. Actually, research says if you give low risk people, you increase their probability of recidivating. So the reality was the people who score high were even scored out of coming home on GPS monitoring. But even if you do e-incarceration, you now, because of our communities are policed, you are now making our communities a carceral state and making our family wardens. Because in one community, you may be the only one with a home incarceration shackle. In our community, we subject to have 15, 20. Now our communities are over-policed, and our family members who are law-abiding citizens lose their constitutional rights because I'm still a ward of the state, and now your house gets to get shook down like my cell got shook down without a search warrant.
Thank you. So, Lewis, you got the floor.
So I just want to say that I just want to say that while this is going to probably be poised as a very spirited conversation, I have a great deal of respect for Deanna and everyone who is on this panel and everyone who is actually in this room. I think that ultimately what we want is for our loved ones to come home. We want our nephews home. We want our cousins home. We want our baby daddies home. We want our baby mamas home. We want the people by whom we are in community with. We want them home. We don't make at Cut 50. We do not make bills that is based on exclusions. Lawmakers do. We function from a space as to where we know that there are people who fit a wide range of convictions, many of whom are on staff, many of whom we walk down the halls of Congress with. We don't believe that anybody is discardable. You discard, I mean, you even discard recyclables appropriately. We believe that everybody, every human potential has value and it is redeemable. So any decision that is made from a policy point of view, we don't walk into a room and we say that we are going to exclude these people. We want these decisions to be inclusive and not exclusive. Anything that happens on the tail end of it, once things get pushed out, it's not because we said that this is going to be a deliberate and an intentional decision on our behalf. Lawmakers do that, and lawmakers pit us against one another. Lawmakers ultimately, when bills come out, you know, it would seem as though that the cut 50s and the just leaderships are diametrically opposed to one another. But in all actuality, we have the same passion. We want people home, and we want people home. We want people free. We want people, you know, to be under less supervision. We want people to be under less electronic monitoring. I can tell you this from personal experience. I had to stand up on account for almost 14 years in federal prison. After I was released from federal prison, I had to spend approximately 5 years on federal supervised release. I know what it's like in order to be able to have my movements restricted. I know what it's like to be able to have my federal supervised release officer to be able to come to my house anytime he or she wanted to be able to search my property, so on and so forth. That is not something that someone is comfortable with. I know what it's like to have a conversation with Catherine Toney, who was the first woman that was released under the First Step Act, and for her to feel as though that even though she's free, now what? So this is not something by which, and I want to level the room with this, because I know that oftentimes, you know, in talking points and in sound bites, I know that we kind of like, you know, get in these spaces where it's us versus them. But the fact of the matter is that this is we, not me. This is we, not me. This is not about Cut 50. This is not about just leadership. This is not about a drug policy alliance. This is not about FAM, so on and so forth. This is about black, brown, and poor white people. Point blank, period. People who have been excessively prosecuted, people who have been disproportionately sentenced, and we want to be able to make sure that all of us are free. We want to make sure that all of us have a stake at the table. We want to make sure that all of us, when we are leading policy, that our voices are informing the work. And again, ultimately, these decisions are not necessarily made by us. We try to inform the policy, we try to drive the policy, we try to guide the policy, but ultimately the policy makers and the lawmakers, they ultimately have the final decision as to what gets included where. I wish that we had that much power. Wish that we had that much power. However, what I do know is that as a result of convenings such as this, we are going to continue to broker far much more power, so that when we do go to Florida and support the sister down there, so that when we do go up to Albany and support the sister over here, so that when we do stand arm in arm with just leadership and closing Rikers and closing county jails across this nation, that we will stand in collective power, and we will even eventually have people who look like me, who look like Deanna, who look like people in this room in elected positions, so that when these conversations are driven, they are driven intelligently, that they are going to be emerge with a level of an informed consent by the collective and not necessarily by those who are exclusive.
Louis, thank you for that. I'm about to turn to Cassandra, and as I'm turning to it, it's going to be another follow-up question, and that is, when do we compromise? When do we as advocates determine we're going to throw the towel in? We do have some type of power. I mean, maybe we do, maybe we don't. But I want to give Cassandra her time, because, you know, even in the context of drug policy, there were issues with respect to, okay, well, am I going to focus on marijuana issue? Am I going to focus on the disparity between crack and powder cocaine? So I don't know if you have any perspectives on this. This is your time.
Thanks, Nikichi. I mean, I think there's a couple of things, and I think it's hard because in the first round of the First Step Act, Drug Policy Alliance was against it. And then with the flip, they signed on to it, which was hard because it's a bunch of, and you got to follow your people. And I was just like, oh, we doing this, but cool. I do think that there's something to be said about that we actually have the power to stop stuff, right? Like we actually do. And I think there's this narrative I work on legislation. That's what I do. We know that the advocacy groups basically write the bills, tell the legislators like what should be in the bills, what should not be in the bills. Before the bill even gets introduced, the advocacy organizations are negotiating with our champions, right? And like what they're comfortable doing. When they introduce it, then they have to navigate the people, their elected, their colleagues on what they think they can pass. Throughout all that time, we still have power. Drug Policy Alliance has killed bills all over. If we were in this, now we're out. So I think there's a conversation here about us being honest about how much actual power we have. Because we can stop things, and I think it's important. Now, if you're making a decision to not stop things, then stand on that decision, right? Like, stand on that decision. If you decided, I'm gonna ride with this all the way through, then be able to say that you're gonna ride the way all through. But don't say that we didn't have the power to stop it, because we always have some version of power that we can push forward. And I think that's really important, because the other thing about doing policy making is that there's a difference between doing policy and there's a difference between organizing and being responsible. And that is not something that is always talked about. It is more than basically standing up there and taking a picture and like saying that we're moving. Like, we actually have to make decisions. When you stay in the room, what are you losing? When you stay in the room, what are you giving up? Who are you giving up? And if you stay in the room, are you just standing in the middle of the room, or are you holding the door so that no one else comes in? And these are all questions that we have to consistently ask, and ones that we struggle with at Drug Policy Alliance when we work on drug policy. Our whole narrative, part of the reason why I wanted to jump in earlier is because this narrative that low-hanging fruit, nonviolent drug offenders, that language is narrative that we pushed. Is narrative that white libertarians doing the work around drug policy thought was going to move forward. That is what happens when people think that the only thing we're fighting for around drugs is sovereignty. When we are not having a full conversation about race, about gender, about the patriarchy, about sexism, but only focusing on sovereignty and the right for you to be able to get high when you want, you miss the fact that this conversation around nonviolent people who use drugs or people who sell drugs non-violently is important. And if you pay attention to how drug policy moved and has shifted, it has only been because of the leadership and the funding of formerly incarcerated people, that they were able to move and push and struggle and challenge openly the leadership of the drug policy reform movement consistently. That's how we get to a space where DPA doesn't use words in creating the narratives of violent and non-violent. That's how we didn't get there because white people woke up one day and decided that that was the truth. They got up there because people like Dorsey and Daryl, right? And Vivian and Glenn, right, were saying things like, you can't talk like that anymore. You can't fund us and have us sit in the back of the room and then shit on us on the stage. You can't do that, right?
Wow.
And then you can't be in a situation. And the thing is, the other thing is, we are still fucking ourselves over because we're not effectively talking about people who sell drugs. We're still talking about people who use drugs because we've created a whole narrative around how you can't criminalize people that are using because there's addiction, there's all these different things. But let's be very clear. People use drugs for multiple reasons. It is a spectrum. There are people that are struggling with drugs and there are people that are having a good fucking time with drugs. And none of those people deserve to be criminalized. And people who sell drugs are also selling drugs for the same reasons that people are using drugs. Right? And so now, then we're in a situation when Trump can build a freaking wall because fentanyl is being pumped into our communities by these drug sellers from MS-13 because it's all this stuff that we refused to do from the beginning. And it is now coming back in the middle of an opioid crisis when white people are dying and everyone wants to give more money to law enforcement to increase the carceral state. And then we're confused.
Okay, with that.
Having a drug war. And we're confused as to why black people in New York are dying at the highest rates in 12 years.
Okay.
We're confused.
Okay, this is how we're going to proceed from here. Because this is how we're going to proceed because I really want to open it up for Q&A. I really, really do. So I'm just going to ask one more question. We planted a lot of seeds here, didn't we? Okay. I'm just going to pose one more question. I think it's a really critical question I would like everyone to respond to, and then we're going to open it up. And that question basically is, how can we, all of us, okay, on a continuum of strategy or strategic differences, how can we relate to each other in respectful and in affirming ways? I've been working on these issues for a very, 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 very long time. And I really had not experienced before in the past with advocacy what recently has been experiencing. And I think, I guess I want to say, how can we forward this train moving and be respectful, be affirming, and recognize that there are inside strategies, there are outside strategies. There are, people have different theories of change, but all of these, okay, if they are genuine, and I think that they are, have a place at the table. So how can we relate to each other without differing strategies and theories? I want everyone to go and address that.
Yeah, I'll go first. I think that what has to happen in any movement is that you need creative tension. If it wasn't for the people who, you know, when point back to the First Step Act, when it was initially introduced and it was skeletal in its original concept, and I had issues with it, and I was suspicious of the bill. If it wasn't for those people who were saying that the bill did not go far enough, that it did not have front-end reform, that it did not include sentencing reform, then we would not have gotten 924C, we would not have gotten 841, we would not have gotten 851, et cetera.
But
right?
Louis, some of those people feel that they were demonized. So how would you respond to that?
Well, I want to stick to answering your question first, and then I'll answer the B clause to that. So you asked the question, how can we move? How can we get from our now into our next, essentially, right? Essentially, as a movement, this is what has to happen. It's the unsophisticated, simplistic principle of love, faith, trust, and fidelity. Like you can't get beyond it. It's love, faith, trust, and fidelity. Love, faith, trust, and fidelity. We have to love one another. We have to trust one another. We have to have faith, even if not in the method, if not in the methodology of the way that other people are engaging in this work. We have to have faith, and we have to trust and believe that they are doing the work as best as they know how, and we have to hold them responsible to the work. I need to be held responsible in my personal lives, so I know I need to be held responsible in my professional life. To answer your question, you said that there are those who feel as though that they've been demonized. I can't respond, and I can't coddle, and I can't give a big group hug to all those people who feel as though that they've been demonized. I personally can't do it. That's the fact of the matter. Now, the feeling of the matter is this. I personally have never made a decision as it relates to policy. I have never walked into a room with Cut 50 without bringing the more than 200 people that I am personally in contact with who are in federal prison into that room. I have never walked into a room without bringing the Catherine Tonys in the room, without bringing the Dennis Broadnacks in the room, without bringing the Matthew Charles in the room with me, without bringing myself in that room. And I think that what happens is that when we are in this space, we have a tendency to think that those who are affiliated and or tethered with an organization that is pushing policy, that is doing work that we disagree with, that either A, those people are illegitimate in their informing of this work, and or B, that their experiences are invalidated. And I think that that's not right. I don't think that that's right. And I have personally seen people take a professional disagreement and make it personally attack people. I've seen it in the First Step Act. I've seen it on Twitter. I've seen it on Facebook. I've seen it, and I have never responded that way. I have never responded that way. Reason being is because I have a great deal of admiration. I got a great deal of admiration for Deanna. I got a great deal of admiration for you. I got a great deal of admiration for Andrea. And I know that everybody who is on my team, they have a great deal of admiration for the work that is being done. Even if we have personal disagreements, I know that professionally, I personally admire every single person that is moving this needle to a greater space in order to be able to effectuate change. And that's just my personal view on this.
Thank you, Louis. Who would like to be next?
I'll go.
Okay.
No, because I think there's a couple of things of how do we all come together. I think we all come together by understanding the role that we all should play. So there's one thing, I used to have this saying up until First Step Act, that if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a chair. But what I realized is some people didn't understand what the table was. So a table, and I had to define that. I had to really take a look at the table means different things based on different people and their expertise. Yes. So for me, the table is the table that Just Leadership is sitting at now, with senators who are sponsoring the bill, calling us as the expert witness at the table to talk to Congress about this. So when you talk about directly impacted people, centering and elevating the voices of those most impacted by this issue to drive policy change, I don't need to walk the halls of Hart Senate building talking to legislators after the expert witness have sat at the table and I wasn't at the table. So I do have power. And what I realize is sometimes we pick up, even as directly impacted individuals, people pushing policy, partners, we pick up an oppressive mindset walking through the door. And what I realized, you can't concede. So when we talk about Just Leadership, one of the biggest things we talk about is bold. How do we hold the line? And if our line get crossed, we shut this bill down. So just as politicians take a bill and pull stuff out, if they put stuff in that's harmful, when it come back to us, because we playing this game, when it come back to us, we pull out the harmful bills they put in it. So if we get down to a bill that doesn't cause harm but is a small step, we can make a decision that we're going to move forward with that. But to give up my power and to walk out of a room and have to tell the over 7 million individuals who are in a correctional supervision or incarcerated state that some of y'all coming home and some of y'all ain't. Because here's the thing, a bill should always keep giving. After the retroactive of the First Step Back in the 2600 come home, that part of the bill is dead. There's no more keep on giving. Amendment 4, restoring the rights, every year that 1.4 is going to get to vote. It keeps on giving. Anybody who gets caught up in the correctional system in Florida and get a felon still is going to be able to vote. It keeps on giving. So I don't want to attack individuals, but I think this is where we have to come together as a coalition, as a group of people, and say, what is the line? What do we give? I don't walk into a room already conceding with my head down. I walk into the room with the whole house, and if you start throwing things out and you throw the kitchen sink out and I still got the plumbing, I still might have gotten something that I wanted. So we have to really take how is this entrenching? And I think you have to really go back to, man, slavery never ended. It morphed into mass incarceration. And every time we tinker around the edges of incarceration, we continue to entrench that harm. It's not going to happen until we get to a Jim Crow law, such as voting rights. Amendment 2 in New Orleans, where it didn't take a unanimous jury to give you a life sentence in prison. That is a Jim Crow law. So we have to start looking at this from a social justice perspective and not a criminal justice perspective, because it's really about human dignity.
Thank you, Deanna. So I want to go to Laura right now. And we're talking about how we relate to each other and how we can affirm and respect each other as we are going about our organizing with our various strategies. And we can be brief.
Well, first, I just have to say that for white people in the movement like me, and we have to learn this over and over again, listen more than we talk, or at least listen first, and really challenge ourselves. Because, I've been doing this under the leadership of Black organizations for many, many years, and I catch myself out on racist shit every day. It's really bred in the bones. So that's one thing. The other thing is we have to talk to each other. Because like I think what Cassandra said about when we have the power, when we're starting things, that was true for us. We're pushing a bill, elder parole. We didn't write it. We consulted. But the first thing that one of the legislative sponsors, well, it's not a sponsor, but pusher of it, said to us is, will you agree if we, we may have to take out people convicted of of killing cops, let's be clear, and of sex crimes. And we said, no, we won't. And then our allies in the room from other criminal justice projects, he turned to them and said, basically, will you? And they said no. And so we need each other's support on those things. And we need to talk before the shit is on the books. And before we're making the press statement saying, here's our new bill. So that's one thing. I think, from my experience in the movement and sectarianism, we have to look first for what we can agree with before we see what we can disagree with. And I know another question that Nikichi had that she didn't get to is, when do we make our disagreement public? And there's a reason for doing that. The reason is to educate. But I think, and this has been really interesting to me, because quite frankly, I was so excited when Amendment 4 got passed, but I was really upset that everyone who commented on it said, except for, and didn't say, and that's a problem and it needs to be addressed. So we need to figure out how we can have a strategy that is the maximal and push for it. And the last thing is, when we start new coalitions, we should look at the coalitions that have been struggling on the ground for years, that might not have money, that might not have media consultants, and go to them first and say, how can we support you before people start their own? That's what I think.
I'm gonna go to Sheena. I'm gonna let you close it out. Sheena, talk to us. You next.
I just want to add that there is a clemency process in place for the 2%. So there's not like they cannot apply to get their rights restored or their voting rights. So I just want to let folks know that there is a process in place, and the process should be much easier now because you got 1.4 million people who don't have to go through that same process. I just want to just lift up, I know it was you mentioned in some of your questions about who we consider outsiders and insiders, and you talked about how do we work together, and I just want to just lift up how do we work together? One, remember who we're working for, what we're working for, keeping directly impacted people and returning citizens at the center of our work. And then don't minimize the roles of folks based on experience. So I just want to say, there's sometimes a lot of division within organizations or the work that we do, and we try to put people in silos. Okay, well, she never did no time. Or I did 20 years and she only did 2. Or she doesn't have a felony conviction. But at the same time, they were all impacted by the justice system. And I think about like the work that I'm doing with Florida Rights Restoration, or I did along this journey, where people even question my role in this work because I wasn't a returning citizen. But I am directly impacted, right? And I could bring value to this work. And I did. I raised millions of dollars for the amendment. I started the first organizing program for FRC. I led the peer-to-peer organizing program for Amendment 4, where returning citizens knocked on low propensity doors. We had a 82% turnout rate for homes that had someone who's directly impacted. 82. That means 82% of the people that we knocked on their door, they turned out and voted for Amendment 4. I still deal with the collateral consequences. I can't own a gun. I can't rent anywhere because my husband is a returning citizen. So don't devalue or minimize my role in the work, and allow people to just be a part of this. Like, just don't divide. We got to stop with the division, even within our movement. And so I just want to just lift that up, that we got to stop dividing. Know that people have roles. People are passionate. I have people who, they're doing time with their sons and daughters. Miss Connie's and Miss Connie, I hope you all mind, but she is my heart is she is Fannie Lou all the way. She is our advocate, but she's also doing time with her family members. Her pain is pushing her towards her purpose, right? She uses that pain and her purpose to help push policies that has created power. So I would say we have to just allow people to come along on the train, let them find a seat, right? And if they just taking up space, kick them off at the next stop.
Cassandra, bring it home.
I would say two things. First, we have to be bold and courageous enough to tell the whole truth. Because I think oftentimes when people are doing policy works, their expectations and the things that their deliverables shift in the room and their allies have no idea. And that you're holding multiple different things at the same time. And people think that you are operating from a set of principles that were laid out 3 months ago, but yours have shifted because of funding, because of media and polling that you didn't share with your allies, or because you've created new relationships and nobody else knows. And then part of the reason why stuff gets personal is because people feel lied to. Because the dynamics have shifted and nobody told. And I think it's really important for people to tell the truth and stand in it. Just stand in the truth. Yo, we have decided that it is okay for us to move with this. And this is what we're gonna do. We can't stand with you no more, but that's it. At that point, people can't throw mad, they can throw all this stuff, but you have level set and let people know what they are dealing with. And I think it's really problematic, especially when we are working on these issues, when it's all our families on the line, where you switch it up and you don't tell anybody else, because that's how people die. That's how people die, when you're not telling the truth. You have to tell people that your expectations and the things that you are working towards have shifted. Because then you give people the opportunity to make their own decisions, right? Like, you can't do that. Like, it's not fair. It's really not fair, and it's super dangerous. And so I think we have to tell the truth. The second thing I will say, we got to get out of using capitalism principles for reform. There is a real problem here. We are literally using business models as a way to do criminal justice reform. That shit is beyond problematic, because the whole criminal justice system is based on a business model based on the exploitation, subjugation, criminalization, and the killings of black bodies. So Audre Lorde already told us that the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. And so therefore, the fact that we're using this business model approach to do reform is not only problematic, it's antithetical to what we're doing. And it's not the truth. Y'all, we are using capitalism principles, we're using business models in engaging with each other, in the way that we build coalitions, in the way that we write bills. We're using business models as a way to get towards freedom. And that is not liberation.
Let's bring it home.
And that is not it. And so it's really important that we tell the truth and kick the capitalism out of reform.
There we go. Let's give them all a big hand. Woo! I want everyone to close your eyes for a minute, please. Just close your eyes. Close your eyes, and I want you to close your eyes. And breathe for a moment. Breathe. And I want to ask you a question. When you're planning a vacation or a big trip, do you sometimes visualize being there before you get there? Do you see yourself having fun with friends and relatives, or participating in the meeting, or obtaining some needed service? If you watch your visualization, you see that what you expected is often obtained. The same is true for justice reform. Let's hold the vision of obtaining justice, Deanna. Visualize us sitting around that table negotiating transformation, Lewis. Picture a successful outcome in that negotiation, Laura, that doesn't throw anyone under the bus. What does justice look like, Sheena? Stay with that picture, Cassandra, as the train traverses the land, picking up passengers and workers and fuel along the way. Claim the victory, my brothers and sisters. Family. Then all the valleys will be just that. Valleys that will be overcome. Claim the victory, and no power can stop us. Claim the victory now and see it unfold. I can see that light at the end of the tunnel. Can you? I can see the vindication of our ancestors through the receptacle of justice system transformation. Can you? I can see the striking down of laws that maintain the vestiges of enslavement era. What about you? I can see poverty-stricken communities being infused with resources to provide adequate housing and livable wages and other human rights. I see it. Do you? I can see marginalized people in general and impacted women in particular centering their voices in the struggle. Do you? When you can see and imagine just what justice looks like, there is no question but that victory is ours. And we have 5 minutes, so open your eyes. And I'm not going to have you ask a question to the panelists because we don't have time to hear the response. But I want to hear from you if you have something burning that you really wanted to say, that you want to really, we have 5 minutes. There can be 5 people, 1 minute each. Let's hear from you. Go on, Daryl. I see your hand. Do we have 4 others? 1 minute each. We have to end right at 1:45. Are you? Oh, okay. Well, come on. Do we have a microphone there? How does this work? Oh, there we go. Great.
Hi, everybody. I'm Daryl Baldwin. I am the Director of National Policy for the Center for Disability Rights and ADAPT. And we shut down Mitch McConnell on June 22nd, 2017, and he did not get to pass his horrible ACA destruction of a bill. So we are capable of shutting shit down all the time.
Thank you.
And that's what we do. And I just want to say, disabled and disability people have not been brought forth in this room, so I'm bringing their voices here. And disability does not mean mental health. It means deaf people, blind people, low vision, people with physical developmental disabilities. And First Step Ag did nothing to help our community.
Great. Come on, young lady. Come on. Come quickly. 3 more people go behind this. Sister, do I need to call
Hello,
on you?
everyone. My name is Dominique. I am the founder and executive director of Daughters Beyond Incarceration. We are an organization in New Orleans that works to enhance the lives of girls with incarcerated fathers. And what I want to say is whenever you guys convene and discuss incarceration for women or for men, you should definitely include a series about the children. Because there's no way that we can educate ourselves on how the mind of a person that's incarcerated works unless you tell us. But you have to include us in your discussions. There should have been a session here about children and about what we can do to support our mothers, our fathers, and how we can break the communication gap and how to actually encourage mothers to be parents from beyond bars.
Appreciate it. And I think there's a panel later on that's going to deal with impacted families or something along those lines. So well said, and I think there's something in the program. Maybe there should be more. Yes.
All power to the people. I am so thankful to be here. I want to just say how ordinary people out of public housing, people that you don't think want to be involved in these situations, is just waiting for the opportunity.
Wow, yes.
We went to Tallahassee, Florida last year when we had a state senator that told us how he was going to write our bill. And we told him that if he touched it, he would no longer be a state senator.
That's right
So
there.
I believe in the power of the people. And the last thing, in 2 days, and I want to say this, we can't let funders get in our way.
Come on.
We got to tell our story because we want our damn people free. And so every time we go through the door, it should be the method that if they want to work with us, they dance to our damn tune.
Hey, pass the mic. Thank you. Quickly. You got a half a minute each now. Go on.
What's going on, everybody? My name is Dom. One of the few black doctoral students from Binghamton University upstate, my homegrown Ella. I just wanted to say, I've been looking into Afro-pessimism a lot lately, and I think going off of what you said about, infusing capitalism in our work, I feel like we also need to talk about legitimizing a system that is inherently invested in anti-blackness, right? Yes. And an antagonistic relationship to between blackness and humanity. Like the Constitution didn't even include us as humans, so I feel like even beyond trying to change policy, we need to even rethink this whole government thing and how it's set up, because I think stuff is just gonna keep getting reproduced in different forms over time if we don't.
It just changes clothes.
Thank you, my brother. Okay, last statement. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. My name is Louisa Tatum. I work at the New York Public Library at the Bronx Library Center, and I am a career coach. And so I just wanted to add to the conversation, in regards from policy perspective and what we can do. In the libraries, in the communities, supermarkets, we need to ask the question of, are there people here who are formerly incarcerated who are employed? How do we employ people who are formerly incarcerated? I work with some people and do resume writing, and it is all free at the New York Public Library, and many people do not know the free services that are available at the library and that are supported by funding. How do you get more funding for career services so that we can get resumes, job applications, and people employed? It's just really important to add that to the conversation. And if you go into your local business or wherever you shop, if you don't see people who are disabled or of different orientations, if you don't see it, that needs to change. And you need to be asking about the HR practices at those local places, because I can't help them get jobs if you're not demanding that they get employed.
So I really want to thank all of the statements from the audience. I want to thank Louis Reed for Come 50, Deanna Hoskins from Just Leadership USA, Laura Whitehorn from Release Aging People in Prisons, Cassandra Federic from Drug Policy Alliance, and Sheena Mead from the Florida Rights Restoration Project. Thank you, everyone.
Y'all quick, wait. Party ain't over. Party ain't over. Few quick housekeeping details I wanted to just cover with you. But before that, I wanted to take a quick moment and thank all of you again for being here. This work is hard work, right? And we need spaces like this to be able to come and really renew and refocus and really I think just get our whole lives back together sometimes. So I appreciate you for being here. I appreciate the panel for giving us all of this life. So there's lunch, guys. We're not gonna not feed you here. There's lunch on the sea level. Be patient because there's a lot of us and people are really wanting to make sure that you guys have a good experience. So be patient with lunch. Also, for formerly incarcerated women, we have a really special offering that's happening upstairs. They're doing portraits and headshots, and they are really doing an amazing job. Sometimes I think it's important for us to be able to see ourselves differently, right? And sometimes we need to see the love and the beauty that other people see in us. And so that's one of the efforts that's happening right now. What else am I telling them about, Cameron? Oh, so tabling. We have tabling in the room just across the hall. There are a bunch of different organizations out there with a lot of different info that they want you to have while you're here. So be sure to stop in there. Their books, one of the big homies' books is in there. Danielle Sered's new book. Yeah. So go in there. There's a whole bunch of stuff to get your wokeness back up. So please stop in there and do that. The photo booth is still here. It's relocated right now. Go in there. Get your life for that. It's in the art room. So go in there and do that. And yeah, keep the energy up. Yeah. Thank you. Oh, no. Hey, party not over. One more thing. I forgot you I'm sorry. No. We have a really extra special offering, and Naima's going to tell you about that. Okay, thanks.
Peace, community. I know everyone's super hungry and ready to move out of this room. I just want to acknowledge that in spaces like this, it's really important for us to consider our healing and our well-being. So across the hall from here in room 305 is a healing and wellness room that's being held down by Harriet's Apothecary and All Black Healing Justice Collective, as well as Free 2, which is a growing healing justice initiative of all Black, Indigenous, and people of color who are survivors of sexual violence, state-sanctioned violence, and intimate partner violence. We believe that there should be no stories about us without us. So we are really intentional about co-creating community spaces where our healing is at the center and where we get to build and hold one another and hold up the legacies of survival that have brought us to this day. So we will be there all day until 4 o'clock. And at 1 o'clock, we're going to facilitate an offering with y'all so you can do some breath work and a little bit of reflection on visioning a world where everyone is free too. And if you have any other questions about Harriet's Apothecary or about the Free 2 initiative and the collective, you can see us in room 305. Thank you so much.
One final announcement. The plenary after lunch is in this room, 1:45 sharp. That is not in the program. It's in this room, and the overflow will be in the basement. Enjoy your lunch.
It's like one last one.